Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Royal ANGSTRK US5. This is an angle strike. This is just and only an angle strike that you will use for surface bolts naturally. A surface bolt is going to use an angle strike. And in the pantheon of strikes, there are three that you'll kind of bump into. There'll be the mortise, which is literally just a rectangular plate that you'll mount mortised into the jamb, usually, so that your bolt will literally go into the hole that's in the strike that's been mortised into the jamb. You'll have a rim strike, or sometimes what's referred to as a surface strike. And a surface strike is literally when you are, a rim strike is a better way to call it. A rim strike is when you are installing a surface bolt onto the rim of a door, which is synonymous with surface mounting, like you would a jimmy-proof lock or a night latch on the pull side of the door. And I should back up. The strike that you'll use is always dependent on what side of the door, push or pull side, that you're installing it on, and where you're installing it. You could use a mortise strike in push side mounts, but can't see a way that you would use it on a pull side mount. Having said that, a rim strike, I can't see where you will elegantly use that in a push side mount, but a pull side mount, it works perfectly. An angle strike, the way that I see you use this is installed up into the header of a surface bolt installation, where you're going to mortise the profile of your header to accommodate how you want to install the item. So I would see it installed on a door that swings out. So, you know, here's a cross section. There's a rabbited jamb, just crude. You know, let's say it's two-piece. Your door is just going to literally swing out this way. Well, your surface bolt is obviously going to be installed up in here, right? Like that. So the way that I would see this installed forgive me, is in this sort of orientation. That's how I would see this installed. Because this is the outside face. The radius is the half moon shape of the bolt itself. So this face must be on the side that you're operating the bolt from. I see really no other way to install this. Because if you installed it any other way, your bolt would have to be upside down. Now, I rarely see these installed, but I rarely go a year without selling a whole bushel full of these, so they're definitely out there. And really all that you want to absolutely make sure of is when you're installing the bolt onto the door, that the offset that's inherently created, and once you know where the offset of the bolt is going to fall in place, you're just going to make sure that you position this strike accordingly. Obviously, it's got to be kicked back from the face of the stop so as to give you the ability to run a bolt up into that space. Let's take some dimensional properties. Overall width of the strike, about 2 3/16. Overall height, looks like it's about 7/16. With an overall depth of about 7/8. I believe this material is made of solid brass. It's not magnetic, and I don't believe it to be zinc, nor would it be stainless. Thickness of the material, 0.102. 0.102 thick. Okay. Comes with a couple of screws in a complementary finish. And I guess when we sell these, it would be, like I said, I guess, it's my guess when we sell these, is that someone has ordered a whole mess of surface bolts, or one surface bolt, whatever the case might be. And it turns out you're installing them in an unusual or less common application. Push side mount, going to lock into the header. And why not just use a mortise strike for that installation? I would argue that if you used a mortise strike is just this with the hole centered and flat. If you, in your mind's eye, imagine putting that up onto the header, chiseling that area out, drilling into the stop for the bolt itself, there's not much material left there for you to be able to securely expect that the integrity of the installation under duress is going to survive such an action. It would be my opinion that mortising this out the way in which we've discussed, making this flush, running 2 screws up into the face, and then giving you the strength of an L shape where that bolt is going to rest against the inside flat, 2 screws, I would say that that would be a stronger installation with the bolt making contact with more surface area, the length of that material in that height. At the end of the day, if someone were to attack it with a mini sledgehammer, it ain't going to matter how you installed it. But at the end of the day, there's a difference between doing it correctly, appropriately, and then otherwise. The reason I say that is you can, you don't have to look very far in the world to see very old vintage hardware catalogs. I'm talking stuff that goes well, for sure, into the second half of the 19th century. And what you'll notice, if you ever looked in these catalogs, and in our site there are lots of vintage catalogs, hardware hasn't really evolved at all in the last 100 plus years. It just really hasn't. Even the lock that we all use every day, the pin tumbler lock, that invention goes back to just after the Civil War. And while there have been outrageous amounts of improvements to it, the technology behind it hasn't really changed. There's improvements to make it pick-proof, to make it more durable, I suppose, to meet the requirements of mass manufacturing, but the inherent technology hasn't changed. And the same would be with using an angle strike when your application calls for it, rather than using a mortise strike, or rather than modifying another strike to make it work. It's nice to be a part of a lineage of hardware where it goes back so many decades that we are continuing on the improvement of the world around us as it relates to the human interaction with door hardware and understanding the product. And that's where I see you using an angle strike. If you have any questions on the Royal ANGSTRK and a US5, and US5 I should have said is antique brass. They can make this in other finishes naturally, and I'm pulling it up on a screen that I have here. US 10B for oil rubbed bronze, US 15 satin nickel, US 15A for antique nickel, US 3 polished brass, US 5 antique brass, US 26D for satin, US 26 for polished chrome. So if you want a chrome satin type color, you'll be looking at the US 15 satin nickel. Okay. The name Cal Royal is synonymous with good quality imported hardware, both for commercial, certainly for commercial applications, but residential as well. They have an ever-growing, incredibly comprehensive offering of material, backed by people who are reliable, predictable, dependable, well-oiled machine. They just keep sending it out. Order confirmations, keep sending it out. Their inventory is generally outrageously deep, which it kind of needs to be when you are in the import business. And I don't mean to divide them out only into being an import company, because they're far more than that. They're obviously engineers of material. They are obviously in possession of an expert level of hardware itself. But when you're bringing in a container of these, you're going to fill a container of these. So their inventory is generally really deep. The advantage of that is if you're looking for 50 of these, they're probably going to have them. The disadvantage is when they're out, and waiting for the next container. But I'm partial to Cal Royal, and I've been selling their products for over 20 years just because they continue to keep it a simple, sort of endeavor to buy material from them. Any questions on the ANGSTRK and a US5 finish or any other Cal Royal product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.